Hello, welcome back. Now, a leaked clip of a meeting between Just Stop Oil activists shows eco-warriors complaining that their fellow greenies hadn't put enough effort in to disruptive activities in the last, quote, phase of their campaigning. So we've got this video and audio for you now, so let's take a little look and a listen.
Do have some agency, but they know if they take action, it will lead to them being disappeared or shot or killed in some other interesting way. I have to be honest with you, I was quite disappointed with the number of people that took action in the last action phase, and I understand there are very many reasons for that, but I've had to process my own negative emotions in relation to what happened, because I know that our superpower is numbers. We live in a repressive environment at the moment, but as ordinary people, we have power in collective action. We have power in numbers. That's where our power lies.
So this apparently insufficient activity led to 5 of their activists actually getting jail time at the time, with their founder, Roger Hallam, getting 5 years behind bars. That was after a massive blockade of the M25, caused 51,000 hours of driver delays over 4 days. So why on earth do these eco-zealots not realise that actions do have consequences? But I'm very grateful, actually, to be joined now by environmental lawyer and campaigner for Defend Our Juries, is Tim Crosland. Tim, look, thank you very much for coming on. Great to have you on the show. Look, first things first then, just at the start of what that lady said, which, look, unless I've misheard this, it appeared to say that activists, Just Stop Oil activists, risk being disappeared or shot if they take part in campaigning. Is that the kind of, I suppose, conspiracy theory that's being pumped out to people?
I think that's true about what happens around the world. I don't think that's true about what happens in this country. But certainly we've got a lot of evidence of activists opposing oil interests in various parts of the world who are shot every year. There's a NGO, Global Witness, who tracks the numbers, and it's hundreds of activists who are killed around the world. So I assume that's what the
I just wondered, Tim, whether or not that plays into the psychology of it, though, really, because if people genuinely believe that what they are doing is a matter of life and death here, and that they are running the risk of being shot or the government making them disappear if they spray a bit of orange paint over something, then that maybe feeds into a sense of narcissism that we see from some of these people.
Well, as I said, I think that was a comment about people around the world rather than in the UK. It is true that in the last couple of months, dozens and dozens of British activists have been jailed for taking peaceful action. And you will have seen as well at the same time, we've had people released early from jail, having committed violent and sexual offences, who then recommit offences the same day. So that is certainly true. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for what someone else was referring to. There are lots of people who've been jailed in the last 2 months in this country.
Yes. Just on the idea there that she seemed to be expressing a bit of disappointment for a poor turnout, as it were. Does that maybe indicate that actually support is waning for the things that Just Stop Oil do, that people maybe see them now as a bit more of an annoyance than anything else?
I think the movement constantly changes shape and it constantly evolves. And of course, I mean, there are a lot of people who are nervous now about what you can do in this country without going to jail. We've had people jailed just for walking along Whitehall for 15 minutes. Someone called Stephen Gingle was jailed for 6 months after 15 minutes of a walk along Whitehall. So I think maybe that does have an impact. And we then need to think about what kind of country we're creating if people are afraid to challenge alternative views.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously it's not just walking, is it? At times we've seen quite a lot of stuff going on where they've, either committed criminal damage or potentially as well got in the way of people getting hospital appointments, etc. I'm actually quite intrigued. I absolutely do not want to refer, as I'm sure neither do you, to any active ongoing court cases at the moment in time. However, I am intrigued by a general defence, and I would quite like your legal mind on this, because is it right that some of the people try to claim that they are not guilty on the grounds of the fact that the world is going to end as a result of climate change, and that they need to be doing the kind of actions that they are doing now by doing things like gluing themselves to something?
Oh, for sure, yes. I mean,
Right.
that has traditionally been a defence in all kinds of things, where you say you're trying to do one thing to stop a greater harm. So just to take a basic legal defence, somebody breaks a car window in a car park, and the first thing you might imagine is they're committing a crime. And then it turns out they're breaking the window because the windows were fully rolled up and it was a hot day and there was a child in the car or there was a dog in the car and they're breaking the window to save the dog or the child. Well, that's a defence in law.
And does that work for these? Because that's that. Look, hey, this stuff goes to a jury or it goes to a judge, depending on what court it's in, and that's for them to make their minds up about. And that's the legal system that we've got. But I think a lot of people might be quite concerned at that because, if that is the case, that could be quite a slippery slope. That anybody who feels justified enough in whatever cause that may be. Now, that might be something absolutely heinous. It might be something absolutely horrendous. It might be something like, Angus Breivik or whatever he was called, that Norwegian guy that killed a load of people. He obviously had his own cause, right? A completely warped cause in his mind. But, could someone like him try and argue that defence that these eco-lot use, which is that we were doing this because we are trying to prevent a greater harm to humanity?
Well, in my opinion, he wouldn't get very far if he did, because we've got a system in this country, trial by jury, that brings the moral common sense of ordinary people into the courtroom. And I believe in the common sense of ordinary people. In particular, you bring people together and put them into a situation where everybody brings their different experience.
Right.
And knowledge of the world. I don't think that defence would get very far.
So if you conceivably, if you had a jury of very environmentally minded people, and you offered up that defence, which is that we, brought a private jet to a halt at Heathrow Airport or did something else on the grounds of the fact that we think the world's going to incinerate itself, then you reckon there's quite a good chance that those people would be found not guilty. But if people committed the same crime, but they happen to have a jury of people who don't think the world's going to end because of climate change, that they probably would be found guilty. Is that not a bit of a problem, do you think? Because it's not really the same, doesn't really seem like it's equality before the law then.
It's not about reckoning, it's about the evidence, because we've had a lot of these trials now, so we can actually look and see what happens. And when people have been able to put the science in front of a jury, and a jury is randomly selected, it's almost like a perfect little oasis of democracy, because it's totally random. So you're not going to get 12 members of the Green Party on a jury, just as you're not going to get 12 members of Reform on a jury. You're going to get a mix, because it's random selection. And when those juries have been allowed to see evidence of the science and what the scientists have predicted for decades and decades, and when they've seen the evidence of the cover-up by oil corporations and the very deliberate attempts to conceal that evidence from the public over many decades, hiring the same PR companies that the tobacco industry hired to cast doubt on the link between tobacco and lung cancer, and they've seen that the government has failed to listen to the science and has in fact acted on the lobbyists, those juries have often broken down in tears to see what has been happening in this country, and that's led to not guilty verdicts. What has since happened, and I think this is a bit of a scandal, is lobbyists for the oil and arms industry have been in touch with government ministers, and those defences have been removed. And now juries are not allowed to hear that evidence, and now we're starting to get guilty verdicts.
I think that's really fascinating. That is a really fascinating insight, right? One I've been hoping to give to our viewers and listeners for quite a good time now about what kind of goes on in these courtrooms, because then it doesn't necessarily become a question of criminal damage or not. It becomes a question of which science do you believe or what do you believe, etc. But look, thank you very much. We are out of time, I'm afraid, but I did thoroughly enjoy that conversation. That is Tim Crosland there, who's a campaigner for Defend Our Juries and environmental lawyer as well. Right, coming up, National Trust bosses say that 70% of their staff are, quotes, progressive activists, and less than a quarter...